If you don't know what is good versus bad hard, it's a mute point because you don't know what you don't know. This is a core concept that separates training stimulus, which is good hard, versus training danger, which is the bad hard. We need to discern between discomfort in training that leads to adaptation or building fitness, and the pain that leads to niggles or leads to injuries. It's breaking down too much tissue. Hello, and welcome back to the Elevate Your Running podcast. This is Coach Sarah, and we are in the second episode of skill sets that you get to know as a runner. We are going beyond the watch, and this is, I think, going to be a fantastic series. We're in week 2, and it's something that we all, as runners in the endurance space, need to at least fine tune a little bit, to be aware of it. If you want to master it, kudos to you. Congratulations. I feel like in endurance running, there's so much to master. But in this week's episode, I want to discuss the art of active listening. And this is going to be such a big piece to staying in the endurance game for the long haul and being part of it. In the first episode of this series, I discussed patience and how important patience is when it comes to not only training and workouts and building mileage and getting to that place of feeling really happy with your training and where you're at, but also on the racing side of things and being really patient when it comes to producing PRs and running your potential. This is the long game. That's something you're going to hear me say a lot in not just this episode, but in future episodes. And it takes a very long time to really tap into our potential. I know it can be really difficult to see maybe people who just continue to PR and PR and PR, but what we also know is that everyone is so different in the sport. So I saw over Chicago Marathon weekend a handful of girls, and I say girls, they're in their like late 20s, maybe early 30s, running sub 3. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, it's taking me, X number of years to get to a sub 4 or sub 3:30, or hello, there's me that's still trying to go for sub 3 at some point. And it, everyone's just on a different level, everyone is on a different timeline to where they're going for their goals. And everyone has a different max potential. So for those women who are 28, 29, 30, and they're crushing sub 3, I'm so excited for them to see where they can go in this sport once they're at year 9, year 10, year 11, because most of these women that I know are in year 2, in year 3. So it's really exciting to see. And, there's also that other side of the coin of really not comparing yourself to other people, because everyone is so different. Everyone's talent is different. Everyone's training is different. Everyone's dedication and what they're willing to prioritize during a training block is different. So the most important thing is focusing on you, and it's you versus you in this world. And we're just, hopefully you're surrounding yourself with the people who love and support you and can lift you high, and keep it at that. Now, in this week's episode, we're going to dive into active listening. This is going to be crucial. And this is going to be the ability to truly hear what your body is telling you. And your training log really means nothing at this point if you're injured, if you're burnt out. As a running coach, I know that success really comes down to what the body is saying to the athlete. And for any of my athletes listening, they're going to laugh, because a lot of times in Final Surge, the training app that we use, the question that I ask the most on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis is, how are you feeling? How did this feel? And it's always interesting to get the responses back and how people interpret what that question is. At the start of working together, I always talk to athletes about how I want to understand how their legs are feeling, how their lungs are feeling, how is your breathing feeling? And then, of course, how is your mind feeling? Because those 3 aspects, those 3 pillars are the key to understanding what is actually happening on the day on a micro level, and then expanding out and looking on a macro level of other things going on. How is your sleep? How is your stress? How is your nutrition? And not judging any one day or any one cycle, based on how you felt that day, but really taking a broader look to see how are other things shaking out in and outside of running. So listening to your body is going to be the skill of listening to your feet, your breathing, your brain, and breaking down those differences to push through your limits without risking injury. And of course, show you how these signals are going to be actually powerful data for you moving forward. So, in this episode, I'm going to cover the good and the bad versus the bad hard test. So, how to instantly know when to push through a tough mile and when you need to stop to prevent maybe a niggle turning into an injury. And ooh, I also get to learn this too. I think it's a good reminder that sometimes we learn these skill sets and then we don't have to use them for a while. And then they come back roaring their very strong, bullish head back into our training. And we get to relearn it all over again. I'm going to also talk about mastering the talk test. This is crucial. Learn how to use conversation as your most telling data point. It's your most telling metric for if your easy runs are truly easy. I think a lot of athletes have a really tough time understanding what is actually easy versus like that 4 out of 10 moderately hard. It's definitely not marathon pace. You're not in zone 3. Maybe you're in zone 3, but it's definitely a lot harder than it needs to be. I'm going to also talk about the science of fatigue and explain why this decision to slow down is often more of a mental game and how the act of listening to your body is actually going to help you from hitting that fatigue level and always feeling tired in and out of your training shoes. And then flexible frameworks, why your training plan is a guide. It's written in pencil. It's not a contract. It's not the ultimate end all be all. Hopefully you're working with a coach. If you have a coach that's being flexible with you, moving things around as needed, and really setting you up for success when it comes to training and fatigue and niggles and stress and all of those things. And when we need to take extra rest and all of those good things. So this is going to be a really great conversation. Before we get into it, I just want to quickly give a nice little update to my recovery from the Chicago Marathon. Thank you everyone so much for being so supportive, so many great messages, so much feedback and conversation around the last episode of the Chicago Marathon recap and having my stomach kind of just continuously getting bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the race, bloating, all the things with too much sodium levels. I'm definitely going to do some research on this gel and more research on the stomach issues that came up at Chicago, because I know I was not the only one. Sometimes when you put something out there in the universe, that's like all you see, right? Like when you're in the market to buy like a white SUV car, that's all you're going to see on the road, or you see more of them, right? So I really wanted to just kind of see how this all shook out over the last few weeks. But the more, the Chicago Marathon recaps from other people and other podcasts, the more I hear about people having stomach issues. So I definitely want to do a bit more research, not just on that, but also the SIS beta gel with electrolytes, and see if there is a better balancing act between how often that gel should be consumed, as well as how much water consumption needs to be taken with that gel, and just see if we can find a better balance, not just for this community, but definitely for my athletes. I had one athlete text me and he's like, thanks for taking one for the team, because I was planning on using that gel in my upcoming marathon. And I'm like, oh yeah, no problem. Like, sure, no problem. I don't care that I got to experiment with it, because it's going to absolutely not only just help future races, but not just for myself, but for other athletes. So we learn as we evolve, as we grow. And I also think it's a really great reminder that you can have everything dialed in and everything that you think is dialed in, and something just totally wild comes out of nowhere. And you got to shift and pivot and figure a way out of it. The week after the Chicago Marathon, I took a full week of rest. I actually took 9 full days off of running. And I really encourage all my athletes to do that as well. There's no reason that we have to start running again. Physically felt pretty good walking around on Monday, Tuesday, so just a few days after the race. I did have to shuffle across the street in Chicago to make a crosswalk, and I could feel everything that I had done the day prior. I was like, oh, oh, this feels real bad. And so I think it's a good reminder that even if you can walk, your body is still like walk without pain or discomfort, walk normally. Your body is still going through a pretty big recovery process. And even if runs are starting to feel good, let's say you start to get back into it on Wednesday and Thursday. I saw a lot of people who ran Chicago get back into it with like taking 2 days off of rest. All of your muscles are still working in overdrive to repair themselves. Your organs are working in overdrive to repair themselves. So that is why you might actually feel hungry or more hungrier than you would typically in a normal cycle because your body's in overdrive trying to repair itself. You could also feel extra fatigue but unable to sleep. That's also super normal. Your adrenaline is super high from the race as your body's working in overdrive to repair itself. And it's all super, super normal. So I think less is more when it comes to the week after the marathon. Taking a full week or more off is such a good thing, especially if you are an athlete who is consistently running and you have, you're that athlete that always has a race on the schedule. I think it's great to take that first full week totally off. The second week gets to be an optional week of listen to your body, only run if it's fun. The runs are, depending on your build and how much mileage you were running, like 3 to 5 miles a run. Maybe you take rest days in between each run. But there's no rush to get back to it. Like, what's the point? What's the point of running 10 miles 3 days after the marathon? I honestly do not understand that. And it's, if anything, putting that athlete in high jeopardy of getting injured, because what we know to be true is that the body is broken down quite a bit and it takes multiple weeks on end, typically 6 to 8 weeks before an athlete feels like their true self, feels like they are fully back to being able to run workouts and run tempos and maybe some speed work after their A goal race. So doing less in the first few weeks after a marathon is a great place to be because it gives your body the chance to recover a little bit faster. And then you can get back into a more sustained schedule or training plan if that's something that you're looking for. Maybe it's a maintenance schedule. Maybe it's going into another race. It's going to be whatever fills your cup and what makes sense for you. But ultimately, legs feel super good. I had to shuffle a little bit on Wednesday night, coaching the Elevate team in Denver. I like shuffled down the track to move some things out of the way in lane 1 for the team. And I thought, oh, this feels normal. This is great. I like this feeling because after Indianapolis, my last marathon in 2024, so last fall, I did not feel good shuffling even 12 days later. I ran a massive PR, and I think that that's pretty common and pretty normal. So I felt pretty good on Wednesday night. And then I hiked a little bit over the weekend and took Monday off. I was planning to run, like go out for a 3 mile run, but it was very windy and I didn't feel like fighting any sort of headwind on my first run back because that's also extra fatiguing. So I waited until Tuesday and I felt really good. I don't have any niggles. My foot feels really good, which is, I think I'm very, very surprised at how well my foot has responded since the race. And it's really exciting. Legs feel really good. Heart rate seems to be adjusting. My HRV has finally bounced back. I'm recording this on a Wednesday and Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. So about 10 days after the race, it's finally rebounded. It was strained going into the race. That's something I didn't talk about. I think it was hormone related. I also wasn't sleeping well starting on Wednesday night going into race day, but then slept the best I've ever slept after a marathon on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, like all of most of last week. And I think now my body is caught up and needing some movement to get better sleep, but that's nor here or there. That's fine. But everything seems to be trending really well, which seems to be, it's exciting for me. I'm excited about it. And I'm holding true to what I said in the marathon recap episode. I don't have anything on my schedule for 2026. It feels very freeing. It feels like I don't need to rush to make a decision. I'm just out here kind of floating around and doing what I want to do. And that kind of feels good. Only the second run in. So we'll see how that feels in a few weeks. For right now, it feels good. And to be totally transparent, it's been something that I've been a little nervous about, a little anxious about not having a plan. And then I remind myself that this is the lesson. This is what's good for me right now. And I think it's going to pay dividends in 2026. So we'll keep depositing into that training bank and see what we can cash out here in about a year. All right, let's get to this week's episode. I want to first talk about the good hard versus the bad hard test. And this is going to be the foundational piece to listening to your body. I work with a lot of different runners. I work with new runners. I work with runners who are running and training for their first marathon. I work with runners who are looking to BQ. I work with runners who are looking to, find some faster times in the 5K, 10K, and half marathon. It's all very exciting. But ultimately, if you don't know what is good versus bad hard, it's a mute point because you don't know what you don't know. So this is a core concept that separates training stimulus, which is good hard, versus training danger, which is the bad hard. So we want to rationalize this, right? We need to discern between discomfort in training that leads to adaptation or building fitness and the pain that leads to niggles or leads to injuries. It's breaking down too much tissue. There's an imbalance. There's too much intensity. There's too much that's causing the body to break down. This is going to be a really big balancing act, and it's a very fine balancing act. The more you run, the more you train, the more you know your body. But it is something that takes a lot of time to understand. And in endurance running, I want you to think of it as we're working with like the crock pot, which is you turn it on in the morning before you leave for work. You put everything in that you want to make for dinner that night. And it's just slowly cooking over the course of 8 to 10 hours versus I think a lot of runners are in that microwave mentality of like, let's nuke this thing for 45 seconds and scarf it down and we're good, right? I think we want everything immediately. We want to know everything immediately. We want to get to our goals immediately. But in endurance running, there is no way that we can absolutely like rush that process. We really have to take that slow crock pot mentality, which I really love because so many things in life now we rush through and everything is so easy to get. And I think it's always really amazing when I can sense that from athletes that I coach when they're used to getting something like immediately and versus like, let's slow down, let's enjoy the process, let's enjoy where we're at right now and really like take a second to look up, look around you, what's going on around you, and really being in the moment and knowing that every day is going to be a big deposit into your long-term goal. So very, very exciting. But you have to look between the discomfort and the discomfort of leading to injury. So let's talk about the good heart. This is going to be the adaptation that is the adaptation process when we are working through maybe a hard workout, a workout when you're on the track, which is a very different day than your easy days. I hear that from athletes all the time. Oh my gosh, this is so hard, especially in person with my in-person team. Yeah, it's so hard because it should be hard. It's not zone 2. You are pushing your body. Your legs are turning over at a pace that they don't typically turn over. Your legs or your lungs are burning during that speed interval. You're feeling the fatigue in your legs. And that could be on the track. It could be, maybe in the last few miles of a long run. Or you might have DOMS, which is that muscle soreness that is delayed and it ends up hitting maybe the next day or 2 days later. So oftentimes the good hard is going to be when your lungs are burning during a workout or you're in the final 100 on the track and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is so fast. I don't know if I can do this. That is a good hard to be at because you're kind of hitting you're getting uncomfortable in the speed workout, but you're not upsetting your body. Your calf isn't on fire. Your calf isn't having sharp or shooting pain, or your foot isn't having a lot of discomfort. It's just a natural process of the workout. Your lungs are burning or your legs are feeling heavy and fatigued on the track because you're in the last rep of maybe a really hard workout that you went into because you're training for a 5K and 5K workouts are tough because you're training at 5K pace or maybe slightly faster. And it's a really big wake up call for endurance runners when they go into training for that distance. It could feeling like, wow, my legs are so heavy. They feel so tired the day after a race, or I'm sorry, the day after a workout. And you're not sure, is this good or is this bad? Now, when you're in that DOMS or that muscle soreness that's delayed, so you're experiencing it the day after, the second day, it's often symmetrical, like both of your legs will feel the same kind of soreness, or both of your calves will feel sore, both of your quads, both of your glutes. That is part of it. And it should feel like maybe you put a lot of effort into your body. I always call it like a good hard feeling, or it's like fatigue, but it's not straight up hurting, which is different. Do you feel sore? Or does it actually hurt to walk? Does it hurt to do certain movements? Are you feeling this like sharp stabbing or localized pain no matter what you do? And it's only on one side. If you're saying yes to that, then that's probably the bad hard or the danger zone, the niggle zone. And this is going to be something that usually shows up immediately. It's something that could show up when you get out of bed in the morning. I have been there many, 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 many years ago. I had quadricep tendonitis, which is an absolute B to get over. And apparently that's the injuries I get. And I don't get injured often, but when I do, it's a doozy. And that one is painful because it's the tendon that lines right above your kneecap, and every movement you do irritates it. So you basically have to be on bed rest to get this thing to calm down, and then start PT, and then start walking, and then start run walking, and then get back to running. I was out of running for over 6 months with this injury. This was years ago. And I went to an Orange Theory class the day before, jumped in the car, went up to the mountains. And it wasn't until that next morning I got out of bed and I was like, oh, whoa, my knee really hurts. And so that's like the delayed aspect. And then also the bad, hard danger aspect is that it was one side, it was localized, and it was sharp pain that I didn't have before. And it forces you to change the way you live your life. It forces you to change maybe the way you walk. You might be limping. It could change your running gait. I know with my plantar fasciitis in June, I know I was running differently. I know I was. Hindsight's 2020, but like looking back on that, I mean, there would be runs that I would start and I had to like stop within like 45 seconds because it was so painful. And then I'd start again. And then I was like, okay, just get through the first 3 minutes. And I was basically limping in those 3 minutes, like just get through the first 3 minutes and it'll like get better. And then it typically would decrease in intensity and it would get better. It wasn't 100%, but it was enough that I could keep running. But that's what you don't want to do. Don't do that. So I would absolutely listen to your body on this. Is it going to be sharp, shooting, localized, one side? Maybe it comes on suddenly. Or is it something that just feels like, oh, whoa, I worked my body really hard and like both quads, both calves, both glutes, both hips sore? That's a good place to be. Now, we have talked on this podcast with Dr. Dwayne Scotty on injury and coming back from injury. And he spoke a lot about, the RPE rule and how everyone's RPE rule is kind of different, right? Because when I was going through my plantar fasciitis this summer, and, I'm not out of the woods yet, Taylor Swift, pun intended, because it is a thing that comes back and it's pretty quick to come back. And so I'm definitely not out of it yet. But what I discovered about myself, and I knew about this outside of running, is that I have a pretty high pain tolerance level. And so what I was running through wasn't normal, but I was normalizing it in my mind because my tolerance is so high. So you can, if you want to, follow the 3 out of 10 rule, which advises you that you don't exceed a 3 out of 10 on the pain scale when you're running. But I think most importantly, it's understanding, like, does it hurt when you start running? Does it get worse when you're running? Is there sharp and shooting pain when you're running? And do you have to change your running gait when you're running? If you answer yes to any of those questions, it's probably time to stop running and talk to your running coach if you have one, talk to your PT. Not all injuries need to be full bed rest. I think that's like a misconception that a lot of people think like, oh, I have an injury, I can't run at all. There are certain injuries that you can run through. I think I'm a good testament to that. Like my foot was not 100% during marathon training in this last prep for Chicago. I remember finishing my 22-mile long run, and it was, I guess, maybe 3 weeks out from Chicago, and my foot was on fire the rest of the day. It hurt so bad. And I thought for sure that's how it was going to show up at Chicago. And then, of course, over the next few weeks throughout the taper and reducing, also, I think reducing some Pilates, which I think could also be contributing to it now that I've gone back to Pilates. Maybe a topic for another a conversation for another podcast topic another week, but it got significantly better. And then I was able to run the race without pain. I was able to walk after the race without any pain. So, really understanding where you are in terms of not just the RPE, but also like how is it showing up during your run? That's going to be huge. All right, now let's talk about mastering the talk test in running, because this is such a big aspect to listening to your body. This is such a big aspect of making sure that your easy days are truly easy. You're not exerting too much effort. Oftentimes, when I start working with new runners, the one thing I work with them first is slowing down on all their easy runs. They're running simply too fast. And even though it might feel good for them, it's still too fast, because I know as a runner what it feels like when I'm running 3 out of 10 versus 4 out of 10. I know what like jogging should feel like versus what kind of that like really high zone 2, low zone 3 run feels like. It just takes time to understand what that feels like for you. But kind of using the rule of thumb of, okay, if your race pace is X, rule of thumb is let's back this up 60 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And that should really be your easy pace. It should be a pace that you go out and jog and you feel really good finishing the run. It shouldn't be taxing. You shouldn't feel fatigued from it. If you are, slow down. If you run your easy days too fast, it's going to compromise your recovery. It's going to take you longer to recover, and it's going to build chronic fatigue. So if you're in a marathon training block and then you're running your easy days too fast, but then you have a workout, you have a long run, in addition to that, there is a lot of intensity and a lot of fatigue going on, and your body cannot recover. And this is a really great place to get injured. A lot of athletes get injured. This was also me about 10 years ago, getting into running and running everything too fast. Even looking back on my first marathon build, I ran everything way too fast. And I actually run my easy runs at the same pace or slower than I did 6 years ago. And my marathon pace has changed about 20 minutes. So that's wild, right? And my half marathon pace has changed, or my half marathon outcome time has changed in a significantly more more time of 34 minutes, which is wild. Slow down. You're not going to get slower by slowing down. Everyone can slow down. The talk test is going to ensure that you can run easy. You can run aerobically. You can allow your body to fully recover, to combat that fatigue. You don't want to build extra fatigue, especially if you're training for a race, because your workout and long run days are going to be fatiguing enough. You want to build your mitochondria effectively. We want to do the best that we can do to run as slow as we can without compromising our running form. So, what should an easy run day feel like? It should feel comfortable. It should feel conversational. It should feel sustainable for a long period of time. It has to feel this way. I know a lot of people use heart rate, and I talk about that a lot too as a coach. Obviously, you need to have a heart rate monitor. You can't use your watch, and you can't use the progression of what, like, I had an athlete, bless her heart, say this to me, and I get where she's coming from, and it doesn't work this way. She's like, well, I'm using my watch heart rate data, but can I just use the correlation of that heart rate data, even though it's bad data, to kind of put together a thesis of how well I'm running in my zone two? And I said, no, it doesn't work that way. We either use a heart rate strap and use that data while understanding your certain heart rate zones, or we don't use it and we use the talk test. And this is going to be different when we're in a build and we have extra fatigue. It's going to be different when we're running hilly routes. It's going to be different when we're running in the summer and it's really hot and humid. It's going to be different if we're running at altitude. So your paces should vary. It should change, but the effort stays the same. So, conversational pace means that you should be able to carry a full conversation with someone. Let's say you're running with your best friend and you guys are chit chatting, chit chatting, chit chatting. And at the end of the run, your friend looks over to you and she's like, I didn't even know you were running. You were talking so well, right? You're not gasping for breath. You're not gasping for air. You're having a really good conversation. I think this is the easiest way. And it's something when I run with others, I notice like, oh, if the pace is getting pushed a little bit, which definitely can happen when you're running with other people. If you're talking and you notice you can feel or hear your breath, that's a signal to back off a little bit. If you can only get out a few words at a time without breathing, your pace is too fast. I also like if you're running solo, listen to music, sing to music. I was doing this yesterday on my first run back. I was so happy to be out there. I was so excited. I think I had been itching to kind of run since like Thursday of last week. So I was like, oh, this is so great. And I listened to my favorite songs and I was just out there like living my best life, upper body dance moves, singing along to Taylor and some other songs. And it was just so great. And that's also another way on how to understand if you're running slow enough because you're able to sing to a song without gasping for breath. You're able to sing through the lyrics without gasping for breath. And I think that's a really fun way too to kind of like dial it all in. Now, let's say you're on a tempo run. We're going to contrast this. You're on a tempo run. That's a moderately hard effort. Tempo has several different definitions. For this example, we're going to say it's a half marathon tempo workout. So 7 out of 10 on the RPE scale, about 15 to 20 seconds faster than your marathon effort. You should be able to speak, but in short broken sentences or phrases. And that's a really good way to understand too how you show up in more of a tempo effort. So we have that contrasting between conversational and tempo. And it's pretty black and white. I think you can also think of it as really embracing the feeling of that you're running too slow, right? It's a feeling that your body is actually recovering through the base, especially after. A great example is after a workout and it's the day after a workout and you're running so slow and those first few miles feel terrible, right? Because you're still recovering from that harder workout that you had yesterday. You should feel better by the end of the run. If you don't feel better by the end of the run, and I'm not saying 100%, but better than when you started, you probably ran too fast and you're not recovering through the run enough. So think about it as like you're running too slow and it's really going to give you the most bang for your buck. And maybe it's the running too slow the day after a workout, the day after a long run, and then you run a bit more of that conversational pace on the other days in the rest of the week before and outside of your workouts and long runs. Something really cool happened the week of the Chicago Marathon. I got to meet Grant Fisher, he's been on this podcast. You may or may not know him from NBC Primetime of the World. Well, I don't think he was on NBC for Worlds, but he was for the Olympics and he has bronze medal in the 5,000, 10,000 meters. And he's an incredible athlete. He's definitely one of the fastest in his game right now. And I not only got to meet him, but he was able to have really great convo with the Elevate team at our last summer season practice. And that was due to his sister Haley for asking him to join us when he was in town. And I really appreciate Haley. She's also a coach on the team. And what I loved so many things about that night. Like I love I love watching excellence. I love watching someone work hard. I love the way that elite runners run and how fluid they look. And I think specifically when I had known Haley for a long time, but I didn't know Grant was like her brother until it was right around the Olympics. And I think it just kind of solidified like this guy is not only so fast, so cool, he's so great to like watch on the track, but there's also that personal connection. Anyways, the entire night was amazing. I was on cloud nine for like ever. Think I still am. And what I loved so much about that night is that Grant Fisher, who I believe at Worlds in the 5,000 meters, he ended up running a 12:50. That is 12 minutes and 50 seconds for the 5K. That breaks down to 4 minutes and 8 seconds per mile. He ran our warm up with us and we ran 9:30. The front group ran about 9:30 pace average, and the second group ran a little bit slower than that. And he was kind of bouncing around running with people. And I think that that is like the ultimate, right? When I saw that happening, I was like, okay, so if Grant Fisher can run over 5 minutes slower than his 5K race pace, everyone can run 2 minutes slower than their marathon pace when they're out there on their easy run. So I think anytime you're kind of struggling with it, ask yourself, what would Grant do? What would Grant do? Grant would slow down. Grant would run easy. You don't have to run 5 minutes slower than your 5K race pace. I think that's a bit aggressive, but I think it's a really good example of how it can be done. And I also have zero patience for any runner who tells me they can't do it. I'm very quick to respond back with, like, yes, you can. It's just uncomfortable. And that's why you feel like you can't do it. And it's a foreign kind of feeling and it might feel hard, but it's only hard because you haven't been doing it. You haven't been practicing it. But once you get into the routine of it, you're going to actually feel the benefits of it. And let's do it. Let's just do it. It's something that we can absolutely do. And I've had a lot of athletes fall in this category, but one in particular stands out to me because she worked so hard. I think in the first year together that we were working together, she was still running everything too fast. And then it was really um, I would say since the beginning of the year, when we talked about process goals and outcome goals and races and what she really wanted to do, she wanted to take a year off from the marathon. She is racing Houston in January. I'm so excited for her. She's coming off of an incredible year of running. She has not only slowed down her easy days, and before they were coming in right around marathon effort, marathon pace, or about 20 seconds slower than marathon effort or marathon pace. So right there, it was just so fast. She has since slowed it down. She is now over a minute slower on most of her days and than marathon pace. And she has not only ran 2 half marathon PRs this year, but she has ran a series of 5Ks over the summer. She has a 5K PR. She is so fit. She's healthy. She's happy. She's excited to train. And it's all because we slowed down her easy days. And, obviously stacking training cycles, but it's so exciting to see her in that space. Now let's talk about fatigue. Fatigue is a real thing. Fatigue is something that is very cumulative. It's a very cumulative feeling for a lot of runners. And that's why a lot of runners, when they take time off and they get back into running, they're like, oh, whoa, I feel so good. And it's like, yeah, of course you do. So your pace might be a little bit faster than normal because we don't have any fatigue in your legs. Like, you basically had fatigued legs. You have then since maybe recovered if it's due to an injury, or you took more time off between training cycles than, taking what is recommended if you're looking to stack training cycles, and et cetera, et cetera. And so, of course, you've adapted to the training, you're going to feel faster. So we have to wait for that fatigue to kind of land. I think thinking about fatigue is going to be this area where you're not only running a little bit faster when you first getting back into running, but it's also understanding of when you're back into running and you have that cumulative fatigue, what is normal and what is not normal. So effort is going to reign true for this. And this is going to be something that you get to learn over time, just like any other kind of concept with the feeling side of things that we don't necessarily have data to really rationalize with. But I think training the mind on fatigue is also a really big concept here. So training the body and training the mind. So in this case, we're going to talk about training the mind. Fatigue resistance, which is training fatigue of the body, is a little bit different. And that's something that kind of falls into a different category than on this for this podcast episode. And maybe that's going to be a separate podcast episode. I like that. But let's talk about the fatigue of the mind. Fatigue just isn't about the fatigue happening on your body, but it's really about what's happening in your head and the motivation to continue. And that's going to look so different for everyone depending on how they're showing up to that workout. How well did you sleep the night before? What kind of stress is going on in your life? How excited are you for the workout? Where are you in the training cycle? How long have you been training? Because anytime we go into a workout like that, we have a lot of things stacked against us if we're mentally fatigued, which could be from running too fast. It could be from not recovering enough. It could be from not resting enough. It could be from stacking training cycles too close together and not taking a week off after the marathon. It could be for a lot of things, but you want to kind of assess what is actually going on there. And anytime that you go into a workout and the effort feels too hard in that workout, whether you're hitting pace or not, it doesn't really matter. If the effort feels too high, the brain is going to signal you to slow down because it's trying to protect you. It's trying to help you. But that's where we don't necessarily want to go as runners unless there's a lot of outside stress going on. If it's just not understanding the concept of workouts and tempo runs and long runs and how they're different than easy days, right? I talked about that at the beginning of the episode where I've had athletes on the track and they're like, oh my God, this is so hard. And I'm like, yes, good. It's supposed to be. I'm looking at you. I'm watching you run. You look fantastic. It's supposed to be hard. Your lungs are supposed to be burning. You're supposed to be breathing hard. You're supposed to not be able to talk to your teammates while you're running a workout. And that's all very normal. But, if you're kind of in a position where maybe the tempo run feels really sluggish, it's feeling hard in a different way. You feel like you're dragging a 20-pound bag of sand behind you. I've been there many times. Your brain is definitely going to tell you to slow down because it's not natural. It's not a good feeling. It's not something that we necessarily want in our body. So we have two different types of buckets. Let's talk about the first bucket, which is going to be reframing the discomfort. Let's say you go into that tempo run. Let's say you go into that long run and you're just feeling like this is too hard because it's a long tempo. You don't like tempos and it's just too hard because it feels too long, even though you're totally capable of doing it. I would like for you and really encourage you and invite you to change that internal dialogue. How can we change this tempo? Because you're already going into it saying, I don't like tempos. I don't run tempos well. So there's already a negative going into it. Typically, when that happens, the run is going to feel harder anyways because you're already in a negative space. So we got to reframe the dialogue. Even if if it's before or during the workout, you can reframe it in a way of this run is helping me feel and get stronger. I choose to continue. You can shift the word hard. This is hard to intense. I love that one. I think that for me lands really well of like, this isn't hard. This is just intense. And intense feels like something that is going to eventually end, which feels comforting. You could have a mantra that is like something like proving yourself right. Yes, I can. I can do this, or you can do this. Those are all great places to reframe the discomfort going into a workout that you're not excited about, a workout that has typically you've struggled with. Mind over matter, baby. Going into Chicago, like I said, my HRV was in the tank. I was trained, and yet I was so excited to run this race. I was sleep deprived. I wasn't sleeping well on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I take that back. I think Thursday night I actually slept pretty well. So Wednesday, Friday, Saturday night, didn't sleep well. And that's okay. That happens. It's life. But I was so excited to run this race. I was so excited to run the streets of Chicago. I was so excited to shoot my shot that I was throwing peace signs and smiles all over that course and I didn't care. And guess what? Because I showed up feeling that way, I had a pretty great race. Pretty great race. First 20, I would say A plus. There was nothing wrong with the first 20. If I could repeat that for everyone running a marathon, I absolutely would. If I could repeat that feeling in that day again in a marathon build, I will be so lucky. That could be the only time I feel that good in 20 ever, because that's the marathon. It's a numbers game. But my mindset was so positive. I was so excited. I was so happy to be there. I was so grateful to be there. I was so at peace with where I was at and what I knew I wanted to do and what I could do, that was the game changer. So I think a lot of times our mind is really the biggest tool that we have, and it can either be our greatest, best weapon, or it can be the thing that takes us down. Because I've shown up to races before where I was negative Nancy, didn't want to be there, signed up, I don't know why, and didn't want to race, didn't want to be there. And it showed through and through in my race results. Because at first glimpse of it feeling hard, I quit because I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be there. So I think we have to reframe discomfort. Do the things that we want to do too. Don't sign up for things you don't want to do unless you can find a way to like flow through it and be like, this is making me stronger. I think the other piece to reframing kind of a workout, a race, something you're going into that you're like, this isn't where I thrive. This is actually like my weakest link as a runner, is chunking it up. Because the whole thing that you're running, whether it's a 4 or 5 mile tempo or 26.2 miles, is going to feel too long. You have to break it up. I will do this either in miles, which sometimes is actually too long. I will do it in minutes on the mile. And sometimes that helps me get through it. So in Chicago, I was doing that towards the end instead of thinking about 4 miles to go. And I don't actually know if I'm going to make it without getting sick. I broke down, I had my lap button or my lap face interface on my watch. And so I knew I was running, at that point, I was running like 7:15 miles. So I said, I was just doing quick math. You have 4 more minutes to get to the mile. You have 4 more minutes. You could do anything for 4 minutes. And then it would reset. I'd give myself some time. And then it'd be like, you have 6 minutes, or you have 5.5 minutes, or you have 3 minutes. You can do anything for 3 minutes. And I just kept doing that until I got, near the end. And then I was like, you just got to go. That's a really great way to chunk it up. Loops are another great way to chunk it up. There are times where I run 1K loops, which sounds probably pretty insane to people. There are times when I run mile loops, 2.5 mile loops, or 5.5 mile loops. And loops help me break it up because I'm not thinking about a 22-mile long run. I am thinking about that loop. And then sometimes in that, let's say it's a 5-mile loop, I break it down by turn, because on a loop, you're probably not turning too often. Maybe you're turning 4 times. So then I break up that 5-mile run into 4 turns, and it makes it go by so much faster. Mentally, I'm engaged. Mentally, I'm focused, and I can make it a big win that day. And I think if you are struggling mentally, I would first encourage you to start with reframing the discomfort, building yourself up in a confident way. So maybe if tempos are a really hard place for you to be, and that's going to be a place that you're like, oh, this is too much. Broken tempos are awesome. 3 by 5 minutes, 2 by 7 minutes, 2 by 8 minutes, 3 by 10 minutes. And then you eventually build into something much stronger. You're building the confidence that you can do it with walking, standing recovery breaks, or jogging recovery, whatever you want to do. That's a really great way. And then I think going into a looped course is probably a better idea, because what we know to be true about looped courses is that if you are having a hard day and your mind is in the gutter, it is going south very quickly, and you're just negative Nancyville, a looped course is the worst place that you can be on, because you're just reliving all the hard that you just ran. And I've been there too. I've had some really tough runs on a 5-mile loop where I've had some really great runs. So I think those are all great tools on how to regulate your mind, flow through the discomfort, reframe the discomfort, and then also use, some tools in your toolbox on how to get through it. I think that's a great great place to be. Let's talk about flexible frameworks. Being flexible in training is such a good thing. Your training plan is written in pencil. As a type A athlete, you might be thinking to yourself, but no, it is written in Sharpie, Coach Sarah. And I will say, no, it is written in pencil, athlete. It really is. And I know it's a really tough concept to like put together, but I think I missed a section to talk about in fatigue. So I'm going to go back to fatigue. Jake, thanks. And for those listening on YouTube, I'm not editing this out, so you're welcome. The second bucket in the mental regulation and the mindset is when you go into workouts feeling stressed, already feeling mentally fatigued, you're maybe at peak week in training, maybe you're going through a stressful time in life, maybe you are just not feeling this build, not feeling it at all. You're like, why did I sign up for this race? Why am I training? I don't want to be here. You get to honor that. You get to honor that feeling and knowing what is something that you can reframe and work through because you just don't want to get uncomfortable and you just don't want to do it versus no, this actually isn't going to serve me for my highest greater self. I'm actually going to put myself into a bigger hole. Sometimes we learn that by running the workout anyways and then feeling ourselves dive into that hole. I've been there. Last year in Cherry Blossom 10 mile training, I remember running a 3x2 mile workout and I pushed so hard in that third set at 2 miles at 10-mile race pace at altitude that when I stopped the work, like I finished the workout, I remember feeling so sick and gross and my legs felt like jello. And I was like, oh, this is a feeling I've never felt before after a workout. This is not good. This is different. This isn't the same as how it feels when you just like crush a workout or you get through a workout. This feels very different. I dug myself into a pretty big hole that I couldn't get myself out of until I took time off and really allowed my body to rest and recover from it. Now, this can happen if you're going through a stressful period in life. One of the things I was advocating for myself in the Chicago Marathon build when Nell asked to write some of my workouts in September was that I didn't want anything too hard or too long because there were some days I was waking up and I wasn't really in the best mindset. I had other things going on outside of training. And for anyone who's gone through a cycle or a season of grief, you know that it just kind of like comes on like suddenly and you don't know when it's going to come on and you don't know when it's going to hit and you don't know how you're going to wake up every day. And there were days where I'd wake up and I specifically remember it was kind of a hard workout, even if I was on my A game. And I looked at that thing and I was like, this isn't happening today. I really don't even want to run a workout today. I have no mental capacity to push when it gets hard. I'm just not in that space. So I changed it. I changed the workout and I made it work for me. Instead of a 10K tempo, I broke it out to 3x2 miles at marathon a little bit faster and then back to marathon, took some jogging recovery between. It felt like a big win. It felt like something I could do. It still felt challenging. I checked the box and I was able to move on. So I think that's a way where you can be flexible and you can kind of get into a space of saying, okay, this workout isn't happening because of other things going on in life. And this is a way that I can modify it. Or if I didn't want to modify it, and there were days where I didn't run what I was supposed to, I just didn't do it. And that's okay. It's really knowing yourself and what you can and can't do. And of course, that comes with time. And hopefully, with this podcast episode, you can learn a little bit more of, what's normal, what's not normal, and what you can flow through and reframe versus what you can say, actually, no, this isn't the best for me. Well, this lends us well to tee up for our fourth pillar, which is flexible frameworks, which is being flexible in training. That means the training plan is written in pencil. It is not written in Sharpie, even though we as type A athletes, and I fall in this bucket, think it is, and it's not. And I think it takes a really long time to figure that out. I think for me, how I was able to like figure this out and be really flexible with Chicago was that I needed to protect myself. I needed to do everything that I could do to show up, to run, to do what I needed to do for body, mind, soul, and just do the best that I could do that day. And that required every single day to be flexible, every single day. And so sometimes it takes going through something very challenging in order to come back and say, whoa, 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 I actually can't follow a plan right now. Or this plan has to be very flexible because I don't actually know how my body's going to feel when I start. Or I don't actually know how my mind's going to feel when I start. So it has to be flexible. Every day going out for easy runs, I didn't know what I was running that day. I just started. And then I made the decision based on how I felt that day. And that was pretty fun. Um, I really liked that. And it provided a lot of flexibility with me. I moved workouts around, I moved long runs around. I changed workouts, I changed long runs. There was first long run back that Nell prescribed for me. I didn't do it. I did it to a certain point and then I didn't. I was like, this is too much. This is too hard. I don't need to be doing this. And so I didn't. And I was really proud of myself for only doing 4 miles of goal pace versus the recommended 7 at the end of a run, at the end of the long run. I just didn't want to do it. It was all feeling too hard. It's again listening to your body and knowing what's too hard versus hard and what's putting you into a hole versus saying, I'm just going to stop and jog this out and finish the completed miles, but not finish, the recommended progression of the pace. That's going to be huge. Being flexible in training is huge. And, some athletes can grasp it pretty easily, but others, it does take kind of going through something or a few things in order to figure out how to be flexible. Everyone's going to be different in this point. But if you're not flexible, what typically happens is you get injured, or burnt out, because life is going to come into play. And if you are still trying to do everything that is in training and living life when there's other life stresses happening or other life commitments or your priorities start to shift. I know this is true to me for the last, through the basically 2025. I was trying to do everything and it wasn't working and I was burning myself out and I was getting really tired all the time. And I just couldn't do that. I couldn't be everything to everyone and still train the way that I was training. It just wasn't working. And I was just like slowly falling off a cliff in slow motion. So I want you to think about how a healthy runner is adaptable. And we all want to be healthy, right? So we need to adapt to the training. We need to adapt to what's happening in life. And I think sometimes we get so laser focused on the day to day, and it's not being present. It's just being really laser focused on what we need to do that day, that we can't and don't take that 10,000 view foot approach of looking way outside the scope of am I being adaptable right now? Am I being healthy, or am I being so unhealthy because I'm so focused on just doing whatever the schedule says and then also meeting up with people to run with and also doing this and taking care of this and doing this? It gets to be way too much. It gets to be too much. So you got to take that 10,000 view foot, 10,000 foot view approach, and hopefully have people surrounding you that kind of help you see that in a very direct, clear, communicative way of hey, I love you, and this is what I'm seeing. I think that's a really great way to help someone if you are seeing them kind of be a bit too into the type A athlete. Let's talk about pivoting, because this is going to be huge. You have to pivot. As a runner, you're going to learn this lesson one of two ways. Like I just mentioned, either through a really hard lesson in life and running, or because you decided to figure out how to pivot. I think of Ross Geller from Friends when I use the word pivot. Pivot with the couch scene. Some of you know. I think most of you know. So I think it's important to understand when we pivot the training, when we pivot workouts, when we pivot and add in extra rest days, I think it's a balancing act of, is it because you just don't feel like doing it, which is going to make you should probably just do it anyways if you don't feel like it, unless it's like a motivational thing. Or is it because like your body's super fatigued, your mind's super fatigued, you only got 4 or 5 hours of sleep, or you have other commitments that day that kind of trump training and it kind of takes over training, and you know, it's going to be a glorified extra rest day? Because if we have a few of those in a training cycle, it's not the end all be all. It's not going to hurt our training cycle. I think what can start to take away and diminish our training is when we add in too many of those rest days, because then we need to assess, well, one, does the schedule just not work for you? Or two, like, are you overrunning and over fatigued, and the workouts are actually too demanding and we need to scale those back? Is it a nutrition thing? So there's so many different aspects to kind of look in when an athlete starts to take, you know, extra rest days every single week. But let's say it's just a few times during the cycle. So normal. So normal. The power of pivoting, it's huge. Let's talk about swapping. You can always swap runs. I did that quite a bit in this cycle. Swapped workout days for easy days, vice versa, moving the long run around from Friday or from Sunday. I don't even know what day they were programmed. I was moving them around so much. And Sunday to Saturday, Saturday to Friday, Friday to Sunday. Like, do what works best for you and what you can do theoretically, you know, with your work schedule. I know a lot of people have flexible schedules, so that makes it work a little bit easier for some people. And maybe you change that tough tempo run into a broken tempo, or an easier run, or an easy run with strides. I think it's also really important to make sure that if you are taking a rest day and adding in an extra rest day, that you're not guilting yourself for that. You're not shaming yourself for that. It's a really critical part of the adaptation process to become a stronger runner, to become a healthier runner. And if we're not taking rest days as written or prescribed, or we're choosing to skip our rest days, or not add in rest days when we need them, it's projecting something that's going to eventually catch up with you, whether that's injury or burnout. And I think rest days get to be seen as a way of, they're also part of the training. It's just training in a different way. You're training to adapt. You're training to get stronger. You're training your mind to take some time off from that daily run. A runner who can take that necessary rest day, whether it's prescribed or maybe take an extra rest day during the week, is the runner that's demonstrating excellence in being self-coach, knowing what they need at the time, and hopefully guaranteeing more consistency for next week. And again, I think it comes back to, are you showing up for that run saying, oh, I just don't want to do it because, you know, motivation's low? Because we've all been there. I've had plenty of days where I don't want to lace up my shoes. We have video of, I think, Grant talking about that. Grant Fisher talking about how there's days that he doesn't want to go out for a run. It's all very normal. It's like a human aspect to running, but you got to weigh like the why behind it. Why do you feel that way? Is it just lack of motivation, or maybe it's like cold outside, or it's really warm outside, or is it for something bigger and greater? That is this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope there's a lot to noodle on here. So maybe it's worth listening to it for a second time, and maybe it's worth practicing in your next season of training. If you're looking to crush some miles, some races, if you're looking to be coached by an Elevate Your Running coaching staff member, if you're looking to be coached by an Elevate Your Running coach, oh my gosh, if you're looking to crush your next race, show up strong, show up healthy, show up faster. Maybe you want to catch that Boston Marathon unicorn. We have one-on-one coaching spots open with Coach Haley, Coach Amber, and I have a few spots open as well as we gear up for spring race season. It is right around the corner, as much as we have a hard time thinking that. And now is the time to begin, because what's so great about starting now is we have a few months of working together. We can work on speed. We can work on foundational skills. We can work to see where your weaknesses are and kind of develop a plan that gets you to feel like you're in a much stronger, better place as you head into your next training cycle. So if you love running and you want to get better and faster, we have one-on-one coaching spots open. Group coaching is also underway in Denver, Boulder, for the fall season. If you want to jump in mid-season, feel free to give me a shout. Otherwise, we have winter season approaching in January. It's going to be a big season. It's going to be a great year of running and training. So if you are looking to do some really cool things, feel free to reach out. Would love to have a convo with you, see if it's a good fit for both of us. And cheers to all that's ahead in running and in life. I'll see you again next week.